Karibu tena kwenye Men the podcast. Na leo hii tunakuletea sehemu ya pili ya mazungumzo yetu na bwana Princely Glorious. Kama ulipata nafasi ya kusikiliza mazungumzo yetu katika sehemu ya kwanza, basi unaelewa ni kwa namna gani mazungumzo yale kwa mazuri, kiasi kwamba tukaona tukuletea sehemu mbili za mazungumzo haya. So leo tunakuletea part 2. Lakini kama ukupata kusikiliza sehemu ya kwanza au part 1, basi unaweza ukaisikiliza kwenye Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Deezer, Audiomack, Boomplay na sehemu nyingine yoyote ambayo wewe unatumia kusikiliza podcast yako. Kumbuka kusubscribe na kushare mazungumzo haya kama atakufurahisha, lakini pia share feedback na sisi kupitia @menthepodcast on Twitter na @menthepodcast on Instagram. Karibu sana kwenye part 2 ya Men the podcast.
Live. You're listening to with Men the podcast.
And this nataka nirudi kwenye ile conversation ambayo ulisema mwanzo about you and what you were going through.
Yeah.
At what point did you get that aha moment? Because yani nimesikiza ukiongea na Nadi alichongea about loving the situation that you're in, things you can control, things you cannot control na vitu kama, because for you to get off that lazima uweze, yani nilifikia lazima time kama you umepata acceptance.
Yeah.
So for me, what was that aha moment? Kusema okay.
Yeah, because like I was also saying earlier, kwamba there's a difference between self-awareness and self-acceptance, and I was extremely self-aware throughout this ordeal.
Self-awareness and self-acceptance
in breakdown
kidogo, yeah.
Okay, sawa. So self-awareness is ni ile hali ya kwamba unajitambua, unajitambua, right? Kwamba unajua mimi nikoje, nina matatizo gani, nina strengths gani, nina weaknesses gani, mtu akinifanyia hivi I'll most likely react like this. Yani ile unajijua, right? And many of us strive for that. Know yourself. We strive.
Again, easier said than done.
Yeah, easier said than done, right? So self-awareness is that. Like, I am aware of who I am. But then self-acceptance goes one step beyond that. It's I am aware and yeah, that's who I am. Nimekubali. So kuna tofauti ya kujijua, kujitambua na kujikubali. Right? Kwa hiyo unakuta wengi tunajijua ama tunajitambua, au hata wengine hata kujijua kwenye hatujafika hiyo stage ya kujijua na kujitambua. Lakini unakuta unajijua lakini haujajikubali. Right? Au umeacha kujikubali, which I guess was in my sense, right? I was starting to doubt myself and my acceptance of myself, right? And self-acceptance is, which also links back to the humility thing that we were talking about, right? Because self-acceptance is, this is who I am. Take it or leave it. Like, I'm bringing myself to the table. I talk like this. I am a certain tribe. I am whatever it is. Yani mimi ndo huyo hapa. Nimejikubali. Nipo hivi. Right? And the people who truly accept themselves, they end up being super, super powerful, or at least the people who kwa sababu they're bringing their full self to the table.
Authenticity.
Most time. Yeah, they're authentic. They're living authentic lives, right? And when you don't accept yourself, you're constantly trying to change who you are, and it's a freaking hell of a life. Right? It's hell, because you're constantly like there's no self-awareness is great and it's fantastic, but you have to couple it with accepting yourself. You can't just say, I know I'm shit at this. I'm not a good public speaker, and then you're in situations, maybe your job requires you to do the public speaking, so you're constantly just resenting the fact that you can't do that, and without first accepting that, which is kind of what Nadia was saying, kwamba without first accepting that, jamani, I'm not a good public speaker. Nimekubali. Sasa, I am not a good public speaker yet. That growth mindset thing. I can actually improve myself. But first, I've accepted that this is where I am. I'll give you an example from my life, and in fact, I thought of two examples. Partly when the two of you were speaking. One is, I used to say I'm not good at maths, right? And I wasn't. I was terrible. I used to. I tell people, like, I used to be the first one to get out of the maths.
Ulikuwa ujupi mtani mgumu pembraisi.
Mzigo nikicheki pale naangalia maswali na yajua na yapiga alafu nasepa. Nimemaliza. Najua hapa nimepata maswali. Alafu kata hata yao ambayo ninayajua. So kama nina uhakika nimepata yote.
At least ndio umeyatambua.
Ni kama at least ile form la kidogo naikumbuka. Right? So I would do that, and then I had that mentality about myself that I'm not good at maths. I'm not even sure I liked it or whatever. Now when I look back, I can see maybe I was very carefree, but I'm sure it used to disturb me, because I was very good at the other subjects, and so it would always be like this one thing. And because sifeli kidogo, so ile kama napata sijui C, sijui D, nilikuwa napiga F. Yani napiga
Mswaki tunaita.
Yani mimi mathematics napiga mswaki, hiyo ni constant, inajulikana. Wana wanajua, mwalimu anajua, mimi najua.
You stopped trying.
I completely just stopped trying, right?
Yeah.
So hata form 4 mtihani wa nani, mimi mpata division 3 kwa sababu ya penalty. Napata division 1 ikapigwa penalty ya mathematics.
It didn't bother you. You saw that coming.
Nishasema bana, mimi so mambo yangu bana. Right? I had accepted that I'm not good at this. Hata mtihani wa national kumbuka nilifanya simi nasema maswali 3 sima 4 nikaondoka nikasema bana, hii mathematics sio mambo yangu, sijui.
I make it up on other subjects.
So nikatoka. So I went to university and things changed for me. Kwa sababu nilipofika chuo nilikutana na nilikuwa nataka kusoma economics, right? Lakini wakaniambia hii economics unayotaka kusoma na hii mathematics ambayo umepiga F kidogo haviendani. Kwa hiyo
tafuta vingine.
Tafuta kitu kingine ukisome, so we can register you, because we won't be able to accept you with this F in mathematics for an economics degree. But we can accept you for other degrees because you have all these other different combinations that you can pick and choose from. So I was like, okay, what's the least effort subject I can put in that maybe I'm naturally good at or I've had more practice than others? So I picked communications. Nikasema nitasoma communications. Huku nafanya mathematics as a remedial, ili waliniambia kwamba ukifaulu hii mathematics ya mwaka wa kwanza tutakuruhusu kuhamia kwenye economics degree. And that was my goal. I remember when I was a kid, naulizwa unataka kuwa nani? Nasema nakuwa CEO, entrepreneur, and I had convinced myself that to be those things I had to be an economist. Right? Shout out to my friend Oscar Murray. We used to have these conversations. Anyway, so nilipoingia chuo sasa, nikaingia mathematics, I was like, oh shit man, yani kitu nimekikimbia huko all my life kimenifuata. Tukafanya nani, the first test I think apiga hivyo F tu kama kawaida yangu. Lakini kitu kilichonisaidia, kulikuwa kuna dogo pale kilaza kuliko mimi. Sasa yule kilaza ndo alikuwa my hope. Kwa sababu
that was a benchmark.
Yeah, that was my benchmark. Kwa sababu after the first class, kwanza I was more attentive, because I was more excited. I was super young, by the way. I went to uni at 16. I should probably just throw this in there. But nimeingia nikakuta kuna jamaa mwingine. He's actually much older than me. He's from Sierra Leone. I won't mention his name sababu nasema ni kilaza. But he was from Sierra Leone. Haongei Kiingereza. Kwa sasa yeye ana struggle level 2. Wow. Ana Kiingereza kidogo, yani hafifu sana. Akawa na struggle, zile mathematics anazoziona pale, zile namba zinamsumbua. Alafu zinaelezwa kwa Kiingereza. Kwa hiyo haelewi Kiingereza, alafu haelewi concept ile nani. Kwa hiyo yeye anapiga F ile mbaya. Yani ile mimi napiga labda 22, yeye anapiga 2. Yani single digit. Anapiga single digit. Akasema bana, akaniuliza, sababu mimi I'm very attentive in class and I ask questions. Akasema huyu jamaa ana akili. Ajui anaingia jo fulani hivi. Sasa akaniuliza, bro, I don't understand the language and I don't understand the concepts. So you seem to be understanding the concepts.
Because you're asking, and it's funny to me. What were you asking? Come on, record a thread.
I was a little more interested in maths in college, by the way. So this was in my first class, by the way. And in the first day of this maths class, nikakutana na ukilaza. Then the next, tulipigwa quiz ya fasta ni kama kutugauge mpo level gani. Hapana ni kakuta mimi niko level 22, wenzangu wako level 2. Sasa
and it made you feel better.
Sasa nikasema, akaniambia wewe una simu, na nikasema msela nimempita zaidi ya 20. Njoo nikufundishe. So what happened was after every class when the teacher had just done, my memory's not too bad. I would sit with him and I would take him through that class of that day. Right? And so after taking him through that class of that day, tungefanya na quiz. Sub always used to give us like a little homework or quiz or whatever. So we would do that together. Then the next time hivyo tamfundisha tena hiyo darasa la hiyo siku aliyofundisha mwalimu. Mimi nitakumbuka sababu najua Kiingereza, naelewa mwalimu anachofanya, namuelezea jamaa pale, tunaelewa pamoja. Then after 3, 4, 5 weeks, I'm like, oh, actually, I understand these things. I'm not as bad as I thought, right? I was just limiting myself, right? Because I just accepted that I'm not good at this, right? Then after 6 weeks or so, right? 6 weeks into the class, another person comes in because it's like, oh, these guys must be so good because they stay after class. They must love mathematics so much. Wow. That's why they stay after class, right? Ajui kwamba huyu mmoja klasa na 2, level 2, huyu klasa level 22, lakini wamekutana, imekuwa like a positive thing. So the guy stays behind, afa ananisikiliza, naelezea, na anani-encourage kwamba, oh wow, kumbe that's how you do it. I'm like, oh, I'm actually good at this. Another person. So we ended up being, I don't remember the number, but maybe between 5 to 8 people who used to stay after class. And guess who is their teacher?
You.
It's me.
Wow.
And I'm teaching them. At the end of that semester, I got an A+ in mathematics. Right? Because the only thing I used to not do is practice the mathematics, right? And so now I had been practicing it, and I'd been doing it with people who were looking at me like a guru and saying, wow, you understand this really well. And so now I have a self-belief, and I'm no longer accepting that I'm not good at this. I'm like, oh, kumbe, I just didn't used to practice. Right? So at the end of that class, when I got that A, I was like, oh, I had wasted so many years here. That is an example of an acceptance of yourself or an acceptance of a situation that isn't how you should do it. In the sense that first ya kusema kwamba bana mimi sijui, kwa nikawa hata sifanyi mitihani. So that's an example of an area that you shouldn't accept because it's under your control. While I had accepted it as though it is not under my control. Nisema mimi bana mimi nimezaliwa tu sijui hivi vitu bana. Right? But when
and it's what we do. It is what we that's what we do.
Many times it's a negative, it's a fixed mindset thing rather than a growth mindset thing. So as soon as I had that growth mindset of I am not good at maths yet because I have not practiced it, then things started shifting. So when we're talking about acceptance, right? When we're talking about you've got to accept things as they are, it doesn't mean accept things you can control and just bana mi ndo nipo hivi. That is limiting yourself. That is self-limiting behavior. If you accept things that you can control, then you're limiting yourself. But if you accept the stuff that is outside your control. So, for example, in that same situation, this guy, I think he got a B or something like that. But let's say I wanted him to get an A, right? And let's say I judged myself based on whether he got an A or not. That would be wrong. Because that's not within my control. I can't control how well he does. I can only control how well I do, right? And so that's the distinction. When somebody asks me, what's so unaposema control and don't try to control, what exactly are you talking about? That's what I'm talking about. Kwamba, there are things that are within your control. Those ones, don't accept them. Don't accept kwamba I can't change them. Accept that this is where I am, but I can improve. But there are things that are definitely beyond your control. You have a spouse at home. You have either a girlfriend or a wife or whatever. You cannot control them. but you can control you and how you react. You can set boundaries, and boundaries are never about the other person. Boundaries are about you.
You.
So you can say, I don't like it when you do X, but you can't say, don't do X. All right?
And that is where a lot of us get it wrong too.
Right.
Go
Yeah.
an extra mile.
Yes.
Rather than I don't like when you do X, say how you feel
Feel,
when
exactly.
Nadia perhaps
That's
does
true.
X.
That's true.
Because then you're allowing that person to empathize with you. Kwa sababu ukimwambia tu mtu, I don't like it when you
Yeah,
come
that's
home
true.
late.
That's true.
Okay, it's my part of my job.
That's true.
Come home
That's
late.
true.
But if you say I feel
You're owning it.
I feel lonely when you're not here home on time. That person can actually take a step and say, okay, how can I adjust my schedule
Yeah.
so I can
we,
get
we,
home?
we've tried this with my girl, and you know, we're not perfect at all, but we've tried it to phrase things that, and I learned this from my mom as well, and from my mom and dad.
Shout out to them.
Shout out to them.
Yeah.
Kwamba, when you did X, I felt Y. Right? Because that statement there, I'm not saying sikupendi.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't like what you did. I'm not even saying stop doing this. I'm saying, Michael, labda ni mke wako sasa nakwambia, Michael, ulipochelewa kurudi nyumbani, nilijisikia mpweke. Haja kushambulia, haja nini, anakuambia tu kwamba wewe ulifanya hivi, mimi nilijisikia hivi. Now this, trust me guys, is
powerful.
not, it's powerful, but it's not easy
Yeah,
to do.
it isn't.
Because it doesn't come naturally. What comes naturally is to complain and say you don't care and you don't do this, and that's what we often do. Hata mimi mwenyewe, that's what I do most of the time. Most of the time, what I do is, wewe uko hivi, haufanyi hivi, so you nini. But then,
You know, that alone is a whole nother podcast. Just like this, like what we've just said.
Yeah.
I think we should do an episode on how to fight clean, Nadia. We should do, because and I don't see you coming to fit in the narrative that we've been talking. We've been all over the place, which is what me and Priestley do. Tukukutana wenyewe anyway.
hopefully you're taking notes and finding tidbits of value, because it's all over the place.
But then ulichoongea is exactly what most of us do. Na kama vile mwenyewe unafanya kwamba instead of, na saa nyingine nasema kwamba mara nyingi watu kwenye mahusiano wakiingia kwenye argument, now it turns into a war. Kwamba who's gonna win? Nani who's gonna be able to pull the hardest punch? Kwamba nakusubiri kama Mike Tyson vile kwenye ring.
Time.
Joe. Knockout. You're out, you know? And then tunasahau kwamba it's a bloody relationship.
Na ni kitu ambacho unatamani
Hatupo
kiwepo
Vietnam,
muda mrefu.
twende Uganda, tupo kwenye war with Idi Amin. It's a bloody relationship.
Yeah, but the thing, why it happens, ni kwa sababu we're aroused
In that
physiologically
moment.
in that moment. Like, I'm lonely and I'm scared and I'm angry. Fight, flight, freeze
Response.
goes on.
Same thing we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Kwamba
you're-
lion. Now it's a
yes,
lion.
Now you're feeling it's an actual threat, a threat to either the relationship
Relationship,
itself or to you as a person. And so we react in that way. We either criticize, we get defensive, we either just stonewall the person and just, I'm going to give you the cold shoulder today, ujue ulichokifanya, which are all not informed by our higher order functioning. The executive brain is off
At that moment.
you know, off the clock, and it's just your primitive brain that is working, that's trying to keep you alive.
Safe and alive.
You know, so ni muhimu, like what Princely said as well. Your self-awareness helps, so that unajua what you're dealing with. Lakini beyond that, there needs to be that self-management. Because this is all we're all now. What you were talking about, I'm thinking about emotional intelligence. There's 4 components of it, but when it comes to self-management and self-awareness, those are our intrapersonal skills that build us
within yourself.
So you need to be aware of yourself, but the most important is to manage yourself. So what do I do with this information that I have?
What we've tried to do, for example, for us that's kind of worked for us is we discuss these tools like this, right? And so sometimes then an argument comes up and you kind of remember this tool, and one of you will remember it before the other one and be like, oh, okay, let's rephrase this. When you felt let's do. We do these other things we call a grievance session, right? Where you have
Prince the relationship guru. Hapo
very-
wabongo wachapiga mtaachana tu.
I'm very wary of actually saying these things. Kwa sababu it's kind of you're positioning yourself as the expert.
Na unajua
Right?
wakati you're just sharing your experience right here.
I've sort of, I'm nowhere near an expert, right?
Yeah.
But then again, you're an expert in your relationship.
I'm very much an expert in my relationship, right? And so that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right? I've tried this, we've tried this, we do this. Sometimes it
working
works,
for you.
sometimes it
Yeah.
doesn't,
Yeah.
right? So we talk about these tools. We talk about these tools a lot. We spend so much time discussing these tools, writing about them, thinking about them, creating exercises and workbooks. At some point when we feel mature and stable enough and whatever, we want to release these workbooks for people to kind of like work through their own stuff that's helped us, right? So we have a thing like we call a grievance session where rather than just constantly criticize each other and whatever, it's like, okay, let's actually sit down and tell me una shida gani na mimi. Yani mimi ambao naona wewe ndo una shida na mimi, niite hicho kikao kwamba oya twende tule nyama, kaa hapo, niambie matatizo yako yote ambayo uko nayo na mimi, right? And then you find what that does is that it slows someone down, right? It slows me down or it slows her down depending on who's having the issue on the day. And it makes me have to think through, because this person is not defensive, is not fighting, is like saying, okay,
Tell me, tatizo
baby
ni
girl,
nini?
tell me what the problem is. Or, bro, tell me what the problem is, right? So I have to, I'm not also fighting. I'm also thinking, if you go to tatizo ni nini, right? So
You're calmer.
You're calmer, right? And then we also try to remind ourselves, kwamba, own your feelings. Don't tell me mimi niko jinsi gani. No. Own kwamba nilifanya kitu, ni kweli nilifanya kitu. And you're not responsible for what I did. I am responsible for what I did. You're responsible for what you do. But I'm also not responsible for how you respond to what I do, right? Regardless of what it is. I hold a knife to your nani, it's a terrible thing, but I'm only responsible for the holding of a knife part. I'm not responsible if you also take a knife and stab me. Or if you I don't know, like you spit on me, or like whatever. I'm only responsible for my side of the bargain. You're responsible for yours. So we talk about this a lot theoretically when we're not having arguments. Like we on a normal day, we just talk about these tools so that the days where we have arguments and
You can
you're
pull them.
spiking na tumekasirika na everybody and it gets really bad and ugly and whatever, and it does. We then have something to go back to. One of us will remember, and one of us will say, how about we try this? How about you tell me what I did and what you felt? And then, maybe we should take a break. Maybe I'm feeling overwhelmed at the moment. And it's hard.
Katikati ya argument,
In the
let's
middle
take a
of-
break.
Yeah, in the mid. Unaweza kuwa nani. But we try. We try those things and they work because ninapokuambia, let's say maybe one of you was talking over me. It's not happened, but one of you was talking over me constantly and I felt disrespected, right? If I say, oye mbona uko disrespectful mwanangu?
Conversation
Inahama kabisa.
Yeah.
Afu we mwanangu unadharau kishenzi sijui nini, afu ukoje mwanangu? Jamaa bana, afu ngabanga kutokana au whatever.
Yeah.
It's a very heightened thing, afu inakuwa mbaya. Like ikwambia, oh bro, when I'm speaking and you talk over me, it makes me feel disrespected. All right? It's really hard for you to come back to that with a heightened emotion.
I'll share an experience
Yeah.
on that one. Yesterday, nilikuwa nimekutana na mtu ambaye, this guy nilikuwa namuona kama my little brother for a while. And then he got into it with my friends. And then wakagombana mpaka hawaongei kabisa. Na mimi nilikuwa katikati ule ugomvi. So yeye nilikuwa namwambia calm down, usifanye hivi na hivi. Lakini hawa nikiongea nao wengine wananiambia it is what it is, Michael. So for him akawa offended in the sense kwamba ananichukulia mimi kama kaka yake na sikumsaidia, you know, na he, according to him was right.
You're not on the side.
Yeah, I'm not on the side, lakini upande wale washikaji zangu nikawa kama wavoniambia potezea, nikamwambia potezea, lakini huku naambia usipiganie sana haki yako. So I didn't know kama ilikuwa na offend relation. So matokeo yake hatukuongea for about a year or so. Mi nilikuwa nasema sijui tatizo ni nini, lakini whatever, maybe umeamua kwa hivyo. So jana nikakutana naye by chance tu, and then akamwambia Michael, I want to tell you uliponikosea. Now mind you, no, tuko kama 2 years tujaongea. Mind you, nilipo sasa hivi sio nilipokuwa then hata mimi.
Ni kweli.
Yeah? So he started talking. Yeah, nimeongea na najo weekly basis. So akaanza kuniambia. The first thing he did, amenifuata calmly tu akamwambia, bro, I want to tell you ulichonikosea. Kwa sababu kwanza when we met, nikamwambia mambo vipi, uko poa na nini, fresh haina neno, so nikaenda na mambo yangu. So baadaye akanifanya akamwambia, Mike, this is what happened. When I was going through this and this and this, mimi nilikuwa nakuchukia wewe kama kaka yangu. And then watu ambao nilikuwa nagombana nao kipindi kile, they are your friends. So what I expected you to do is utwite wote. Like akaambia wewe ungenipigia simu hata mimi niko wapi ningekuja. Tungekaa ungeambia jamani, huyu jamaa ana complain kuhusu hiki na hiki. Whatever it is, sort it out. You could have done that. Yeah, as a brother you could have done that, but you didn't do it. And that's what hurt me, and that is what disappointed me. Yeah, alikuwa anaongea namna hii. And the first thing nikamwambia, you know what, I understand you, I'm sorry. Nikamwambia kabisa, I failed you kwenye hicho kitu. I own it up kabisa. Lakini sasa baadaye I was driving home, nikasema angenipata about 2 years ago. Nikamwambia, man, get lost. Nikamwambia, come on, man, grow some balls. Kama nyinyi mnashinda kusoma radio kwa nini?
Mimi kwa nini kusaidia?
Yeah, but then in relation to what you've just said, it's for me is how he actually approached me jana. It was like, dude, naomba tuongee. You did this and this and this and this hurt me, and I was really really disappointed. I had too much expectations kwako. Na mimi nikamuelewa kabisa kwa jinsi alivyokuwa ananichukulia. Ile situation ingeweza kuihandle vizuri zaidi. You know? So it comes back to what you've just said is the approach na namna alivyozungumza.
Na hiyo formula hiyo ya kwamba it's not a magic bullet. It doesn't work all the time. Because we're human beings. But just knowing that when you did X, I felt Y, or it made me feel Y, right? I'm owning my side of things as well.
Yeah.
I'm owning that these emotions or these feelings that I got, they're mine. They're not you. These are mimi. I felt X, right? Lakini, I'm saying they were born out of you doing Y.
Right.
So I'm also holding you accountable on your side, right? So ako ka formula kadogo tu, but kanafanya mambo mengi. Sababu kanakupa you're pointing out what this person did and how it made you feel. But you're not passing judgment. You're not calling them a liar. You're not calling them somebody who doesn't care. You're not calling them sijui nini, unadharau, kwanzia lini umeanza kunidharau wewe, sijui nini. Because hiyo ndo rahisi, unajua. Hiyo ndo rahisi kwetu sisi kama binadamu kufanya. Just pass judgment. Kusema, we Nadia bana unadharau sana. We Nadia haunijali. We Nadia hivi na hivi na hivi na hivi. That's what we do. But we've got to remember, yani naposema we inamaanisha kweli hata mimi I do that, right? But we've got to remember kwamba when I try and like phrase things in that anyway, I own my side of things. And as men, it's very difficult to acknowledge that somebody did something and it made us feel specifically.
Because we don't even know how to feel, how we feel sometimes.
Like to acknowledge kwamba I'm feeling some way and it's somebody who did something and it made me feel something. Wakati mimi I'm unbothered and I'm above everything.
I'm a man, for God's sake.
I'm a man. What the fuck is wrong with this bitch-like behavior you're teaching us on this men? But
man.
Lakini
wanaume tuliumbwa.
Alafu wewe umetoka kwenye mbavu alafu unakuja unanifilisha hapa. But the thing is without accepting those things, right? Without accepting that this person did something and you made me angry, right? It made me feel angry, or it made me feel disappointed, or it made me feel sad or alone, or whatever the nani is. Kwanza, we end up having these long roundabout discussions about nothing true and nothing really, like tunachukiana to in that moment. Like we're just causing resentment and hatred and whatever. While we could have made it a lot easier by doing it that way. And I don't know, and this is turning now into a relationship session.
I know, but like the light bulb question ipo kichwani kwangu juu, and then we'll come back to that in a bit. Yeah.
But Nadia mentioned these things, and I think this is from her experience as a therapist and as a nani. But amezitaja hapo vitu vinne ambavyo vinasababishaga mahusiano mengi, and these are some of the tools ambazo tunaongeaga mimi na mwenzangu kuhusiana na vitu vinne ambavyo vinauaga mahusiano. Ya kwanza ni criticism, right? Which is super easy to do. It's very easy. Rather than say umefanya X, imenifanya nijisikie Y, it's easy to just criticize someone and say you are like this, right? And the difference between criticism and feedback is saying you did this. And these were the implications of when you did this. Wakati criticism is you are this. If it's a negative thing. It's an attack on the person. Wewe uko hivi, wewe unadharau. Wewe hauna heshima. Wewe wewe ni hujui kutunza watoto. Wewe unatumia pesa vibaya. That's the easiest thing to do is to criticize rather than to say ulipo nunua hiki badala ya kumnunulia mtoto hiki ilinifanya nikasirike, ilinifanya nijisikie hivi, right? That's not criticism.
It's not,
That's me giving you feedback. And the other thing that we do is the opposite of criticism is defensiveness, right? Kwa sababu I feel attacked, I have to defend myself. But defensiveness itself is a problem because what defensiveness does is it's invalidating this. Yani mimi nikikwambia kwamba oya umenifanya nijisikie vibaya, nikakwambia bana mimi lakini hapana bana mimi hivi. What I'm saying is like, no, usijisikie vibaya. Sio sawa wewe kujisikie vibaya.
You're not supposed to
You're
feel
not
bad.
supposed to. Au kwamba ulipochelewa imenikasirisha. Nilikasirika. Ilinifanya nikasirike. It's not right for you to kasirika kwa sababu mtu amechelewa. We can all agree with that maybe, hopefully. Lakini my response is not you shouldn't kasirika. No, my response is okay, nimekuelewa kwamba nilipochelewa ulikasirika, inawezekana kuna kitu kingine labda au kuna hivi, that's the healthier response. But what defensiveness does is it blocks this person and says you're wrong for feeling the way you're feeling because mbona ni kwa sababu hii na hii na hii. So defensiveness is also very easy to do because especially if you feel like you're under attack, you will defend yourself. Then the other one is stonewalling, which you talked about as well, kwamba
jenga ukuta.
Unajenga ukuta, unasusa, ama unaondoka, ama kwa Kiswahili tunaita kususa. Stonewalling, right?
Kununa, kususa.
And then the fourth one, which is probably the most dangerous one, is contempt, right? Dharau, right? We once you get to a point where one of you or both of you are speaking down on the other person, as though you guys are not together, and it's very easy for us men to do that, kwa sababu the way we're socialized ni kwamba I'm the man, I'm the head, I'm the nini. And there's no problem with you being the man and being the head and being the top and being all of those things. If you fully recognize and value the other person, they don't have an issue with you being the leader or being whatever. But if you try and force them, if you try and kumkandamiza, that's when she will have a problem. That's when she'll be like, no, you're not the head. And I'll show you that you're not the head. You know?
Inaingia kwenye wazo.
Sasa inakuwa ugomvi. Na yeye sasa anakuonyesha dharau. Because it's like, nitakuonyesha kwamba wewe sio nani. Sio kichwa. Kama unavyodhani. Right?
Nilikuwa nimekuacha tu ujisikie ni kichwa.
Nimekuachia tu ujisikie hivyo.
Like really you're not.
Nikuboost tu mwana afu leo unajidai. You know, so contempt and dharau, which is super easy to do as well. But we often show contempt when we're insecure. We often show dharau pale ambapo I feel slighted. I feel na kuonyesha dharau put in your place because I feel kwamba wewe you're trying to show me that you're better than me. I feel
unanipanda kichwani. So let me put you in your
place.
Let me put
you in your place, right? Wakati if you felt and this isn't about an equality thing or anything like that. I'm not even talking about that. Like we already did this in the feminism chat. But I'm just talking about like human relationships, and it's not necessarily just you and your partner. I mean even your friends, like your friendship children. And your children and things like that. unapoanza kumwonyesha tu mtu dharau, it's usually the sign, and disrespect, right? It's usually the sign of the end of the times. Sababu you're not seeing the humanity of this person, where it's understandable where you might be coming from, but ukianza tu to disrespect me, and then it becomes a habit. It's people can tolerate so many things. But what they can't tolerate is disrespect.
Yeah.
What they can't tolerate is being shown that they're not... and this is both men and women. Because men, often we say, me mwanaume nahitaji respect. And maybe my need for respect is maybe a little more pronounced than my woman's need for respect is. But it doesn't mean that I can disrespect her, you know? Because she won't tolerate it. Kwanza kwangu ndo kabisa, I won't tolerate at all. Yeah. Right? But hivyo vitu vinne, criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling, they usually signal the end of the times.
They call them the 4 horsemen.
The 4 horsemen
of the apocalypse.
Death of your relationship is born from those.
Quick question. Tunarudi kwenye the question ambayo niuliza before mambo yote yajarudi. The light bulb. At what point for you uligundua kwamba, I'm actually going through shit and I need to do something about it? What was that moment for you?
Yeah, so I don't think I had one light bulb moment. I don't think I had one moment which I can say, this is when I realized, I do remember a day when I wasn't thinking too much about myself, and I felt like, I feel normal. I remember that day, and I remember telling my sister, actually, Zoe, that, hey, Zoe, today I've not really thought too much about anything. I feel just like myself. I'm just in the moment. I'm just flowing. But all of that came... in a nutshell, I didn't have a single light bulb moment, but I had a few moments which showed me I have a problem. So when I won that award, and I was kind of dissociating in a sense, like I was like, why have you just had this spectacular thing happen to you and you're not happy? The problem isn't external, right? Like if this incredible external thing has happened and it's not changed how terrible you're feeling inside, or you're thinking about yourself, and like just that pressure, that stress and pressure and anxiety that you'd put on yourself has not gone away while this thing that you've worked on very hard has actually materialized. That was one moment where I thought, okay, there's a problem here. Then there's some conversations I had with my sister, which we had like just
shout out to Zoe, by the way.
Shout out to Zoe, glorious. Some really, really deep conversations, some arguments, some debates, and whatever that kind of also made me reconsider myself in certain positions. There's conversations I had with my girl. There's a conversation I had with my mom. At this point, I had gone to Moshi. So there was a lot of just... I'd gone to Moshi and to where my parents live. And I had this really great chat with my dad and my mom. And I just remember just feeling so stressed and overwhelmed. And there was a lot of things happening. Like I had some stuff in the family, not the immediate family, but the extended family that was going on. We had some stuff with work. But I was just not taking it the right way, right? I was just overwhelming myself and criticizing myself constantly. And so I just essentially lived in hell in my head. And I felt like it's my duty to Nani. And so I'm just on edge all the time. And I noticed this when I went home and I was talking to my parents, and I was just like, remember telling my parents, like, I'm like super unhappy. I'm super unhappy and I have no reason to be, right? I had, during this period that I'm telling you this, I had made so much money. I'd made more money than I'd made in like the past few months. Right? This was after stressing so much about clients, and then everything came together at once. I'd bought a car that I'd always wanted to buy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And a few months before that, I'd moved to like a street that I used to walk past that street. And I used to
everything was aligning.
Right?
Everything was working out well.
Yeah, a few months before that, I'd met this girl who I'm with, and I'm like, wow, fantastic. Exactly what I'd want, like exactly who I want to be with. So everything was great externally, right? And so when I had that conversation with my parents, I was like, everything is fantastic. Everything is going great externally. I couldn't have a better life. Like if I dreamt of it, this is exactly what I want. Because even like if I'm honest, with you guys, I'm not saying like I'm rich or successful or but I've gotten to a place where I'm not worried too
Sio
much.
mnyonge.
Yeah, so
Sio
mnyonge,
mnyonge,
right?
yeah.
So mnyonge. And even if I get more money at this point, I don't think I'll change my life too much, right?
Yeah.
Even if I become a billionaire, I think my interest will still be I'd like to buy, 4x4 cars. I love off-road cars. I'll probably like to buy those and like fix them up. The same thing which I'm doing now. I'd like to tell stories, or maybe I'll just have a bigger budget to tell stories, so I'll probably just do that. I love to hold conversations and cook and have food and conversations with like Fikiri, so I'll probably just do that. And I'll probably do the same set of things with maybe a little more like lavishness or a little more.
Yeah. But it wouldn't change.
It wouldn't change too much,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't think my life would change too much if I made $1 billion. Just maybe people would respect me a little more on the street, or I don't know. Externally, things would change. I don't think internally things would change. Like my hobbies, my interests, and whatever. So that's when I realized that, okay, everything externally is great. It's not even good. It's fantastic. Like, my life is fantastic. And internally, I'm feeling like shit. Like I was feeling so stressed. I was constantly criticizing myself. I was constantly feeling like, Nani, people outside, they absolutely love and adore me. I do these WhatsApp threads, and I get hundreds of comments in the morning saying how incredible I am. I put stuff on Twitter, and I have
People are like, wow, Princely is so smart.
I have a relatively small account, but I get like really great reach.
Yeah.
Michael retweets me a lot. Shout out to Michael Baruti.
This guy just sent me a shout out wakati pop up. Yeah.
But all of those external things, you realize very quickly, kwamba, if you yourself, you're self-aware, but you've not self-accepted, right?
Yeah.
And you're kind of seeking this like, I need to be better than, like, on a deeper core. Not I'm trying to improve myself, but you should constantly try to improve yourself. But that you're not just happy with, this is where I am. This is me. This is the life I have. This is it. We say, within my relationship, we say, these are the good old days. We tell to each other to kind of remind ourselves that there are no good old days coming. These are those good old days that we'll talk about in the future. We'll be like, wakumbuka kipindi kile?
Yeah.
Nilifanya ile podcast na
Yeah.
Michael Baruti ile
Yeah.
nani?
Yeah.
Which over the past year, between May last year and May and now,
Yeah.
I had been doing that. I'd be like,
Yeah.
wakumbuka ile men ya nani?
Yeah.
But why in this moment here? Why shouldn't I enjoy this moment here and be like, this is the good old day that I'll be talking about next year? Kwamba, Michael, unakumbuka ile conversation tulikuwa nayo? Nadia, unakumbuka that conversation nini na nini? So in a nutshell, I didn't have one single moment of realization. I had a series of moments where good things would happen to me and I wouldn't be happy, or I would notice that my life is great, but I'm not happy, and I'm not accepting myself, and I'm not loving myself the way I should. And those moments would be like, basi manake kuna tatizo. I say, kama umesafiri, umefika sehemu nzuri, umefanya nini, afu you're still not happy, manake tatizo sio hivyo vitu nje, una tatizo wewe. And so what did I do, right? Because action is more important than just thinking about this, right? What did I do? I did a lot of writing. I intensified the writing, both in terms of journaling and the Andika Challenge. Within that, I remember around that same time, around November, we did this 1 year thing for Fikiri, which Michael didn't show up for.
It was at that time I was going through my own personal journey.
Yeah, but we did this 1 year thing for Fikiri with a writing session. I remember during that session, I wrote about something I just learned about. The one thing that's really good about me, which I really love about myself, is regardless of what I'm going through, regardless of like the thickest shit I'm in, I'm always looking for resources and tools to improve me. Right? So the good side of my perfectionism is that. is that I'm constantly looking for tools and systems and models that can help me. So whether I'm developing them myself or I'm reading what other people have done, when I have a breakdown, I have anxiety, or I have whatever, I'm reading about. That's why I can talk to you about Nietzsche says this and Seneca said that, and so you need, because it's usually nimepitia tatizo fulani, ikabidi nika research, nikaelewa zaidi, and then and I like also doing that when I'm fine. Like I say, kwamba in our relationship we talk about tools when we're fine. When we're not fighting, we
because inakuja kusaidia when things are not fine.
When things are not fine, right? And so I do the same with myself. I constantly try and improve myself, especially when I'm feeling good, like right now, so that when I'm not good, I have places I can go, right? So I did a lot of writing. I remember when we went for that Fikiri session, I wrote about this thing called catastrophizing, which is a psychological concept where we the same thing that we're talking about, that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and that there's more things out there that can frighten you but not harm you. We tend to take stimuli or things from outside ourselves and take them to the worst logical conclusion. That's called catastrophizing. And maybe I should end with this and end with the story. There's the story that I read and I kind of rewrote for the Fikiri session. There's this man who's driving his really nice car in the evening. He's come from watching the sunset. He's having a good day. He's driving back home. He's in another town, let's say Morogoro. He's driving back to Dar es Salaam. And it gets to, he's just watched the sunset. He'd parked the car on the side of the road, watched the sunset. He's like, wow, this is great. Takes photos, puts it on Instagram. Wow, fantastic. Then he's now driving back to Dar es Salaam, driving back home. And it gets to like somewhere in the middle here where there's not too many houses. It's like wide open stretches of road, and his car breaks down. And it's nighttime now. And he pushes his car to the side of the road. He doesn't have any network service. It's somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And so he's just worried. He's like, oh, shit. What can I do? Amegundua, let's say, taya ndo imepasuka. Amegundua hana spana, hawezi kubadilisha. Magari, hayapiti. It's somewhere, out there. But then, from a distance, he sees this house with like a flickering of a light. Mkulima fulani. And so he sees it. And while he's there, kwanza akaanza kuwaza, what if what if robbers come and they take my nani? Should I stay here or should I go? So niache gari, waizi wanaweza kaja wakachukua nikiondoka. Nikibaki wanaweza wakaja wakanipigia hapa. So after debating for himself for a while, akaamua ngoja niende. So he's walking towards the farmer's house. And in his head, he's going, lakini huyu jamaa bana, napoenda kwenda pale labda hana spana. Lakini tuende tu, ngoja nikajaribu. Lakini unajua bana, watu siku hizo wamekuwa wabaya sana bana, anaweza kumkuta hataki kunisaidia. Lakini tuende tu bana. So he's walking up, anawaza ya mawazo. Lakini naweza nikafika pale, nikakuta huyu jamaa amekasirika. Unajua watu siku hizo walivyo na nini, afu wakulima huko kwanza yuko mwenyewe hapa na nini, labda watu watanizunguka kutoka hapa, wataenda kule kwenye gari, wataiba vitu. Lakini tuende tu. Akaenda, afu pia anaweza akachukia, akawa labda anapanga, afu akawa atanipa shida, lakini tuende, I need the spanner. Akaendelea akatembea akafika kwenye ile nani, sasa ameshai create this situation in his head,
scenario zote kichwani
kwake. Akagonga mlango, yule mkulima akatoka, kuna shida gani? Akasema, usinipige mapanga, hata sitaki spana yako. Right? So that is catastrophizing, kwamba umelikuza hiki kitu, umekikuza kichwani kwako, umekikuza fuka kiamini. By the time umefika pale umeshajua kwamba huyu mkulima kwanza ni mbaya na anapanga na anataka kuniua na nini na wala spana yake sitaki. Alright? Which it's extreme in this example. But we do this.
But yeah, you can actually contextualize it katika katika
Maisha yako.
It's like when you want to go and have conversation with someone, unasema atasema hivi, kwanza anachukulia hivi, kuna hivi.
unaingia
Kwa I know
tayari
exactly how this
unagombana.
conversation is going to go. Tayari ukishaingia hapa umekuwa kwenye ile mood yako kwamba whatever. Yani najua tu haitakuwa nzuri. So instead of create mazingira ya kuwa na very constructive conversation, una create mazingira ya kuwa poa, twende tupigane. You know, man, Nadia, anything you wanna definitely I'm gonna follow your advice and do part 1 and part 2 because I feel like there's nothing to leave out. So we'll do part 1 and part 2. Okay. Part 1 and part 2. I didn't say party. Part 1 and part 2.
Party after party.
So yeah, Nadia, you wanna leave out with unataka kutuacha na chochote? We've talked about self-acceptance, self-aware. We've talked about conversations.
Anxiety.
We've talked about anxiety. We've talked about kujikubali. You know, hey, sheesh.
Knowing what you can control, what you
No,
can't
yeah.
control. I think that's actually the biggest thing we've kind of
Yeah,
talked about.
yeah, control.
There's stuff you can control, the stuff you can't, and accepting the ones you can't while working on the ones you can.
Yeah.
If you're going to take away one thing from everything I've said, that's the one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much that. And kuona kwamba also I think we've talked about different things. We talked about anxiety mostly, but there's other aspects, the relationship and how our anxiety can affect that. So ukiangalia when we talk about, I mean, this is men's mental health, and we're talking about mental health and everything mental health. But we've touched on emotional intelligence today and how being self-aware is one of the first steps. Kwa sababu kama hujijui hauwezi kumjua mwenzio. But on top of that, lazima kuwe na action. Self-awareness without self-management. Because management is all about what am I doing with this information. Hauendi popote. Bora hata usijue. If you, let's say leo unaambiwa, let's say you're walking around with AIDS. You don't know. You're going to live your life. You're happy, man. The minute you're aware now, okay, I have AIDS, and you don't do anything about it, you're stressed. The stress reduces your immune system. The AIDS kills you faster, but you're not doing anything about it. But kuna mtu mwingine, exactly. Kuna mtu mwingine ambaye now walking around with AIDS, but they don't know, they're not doing anything about it. And then at some point you meet someone who's like, oh, we need to do this before we blah, 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 and you find out. And then once you found out, instead of just going about, okay, now I know I have AIDS, okay, I'm going to die, going with their medications, there's 1, 2, 3 that I can do. Exactly, and take those steps. You live very long, no one would know. You can even have kids.
Look at Princely.
Be careful, guys.
We're not doctors.
Point of thinking, guys, do what needs to be done.
Self-management.
Self-management.
So having that self-awareness, but come on, if your plan of knowing yourself is just to know yourself, I would advise you, don't bother. Don't.
Come on, you're not going to do anything
if you're
about
not going to do anything about the information, why bother? It's like going to university and studying God knows what, and then coming out and doing nothing. What was the point if you're wasting your time?
You'd rather
and
just
money
be in the
and
blissful
energy.
Ignorance.
Just be ignorant and ignorance is bliss. But once you take that step, once you're self-aware, I think you have it upon yourself. It's your duty to yourself to act on that knowledge. So watu wengi unaweza ukawasikia, mimi najua mimi tabia yangu ndio hivi, I'm just an angry person. No, you're not an angry person. You tend to get angry in certain situations. Sasa kama unajua hivyo, ufanyaje? Kwa sababu kuendelea kusema I'm just an angry person, haikusaidii wewe, haimsaidii mtu mwingine, haisaidii community. So once you have that knowledge, exactly. Mtu anasema mimi lazima tu kila siku nikitoka kazini lazima nilewe. Haya. You have that knowledge. Kuna watu wengine, they go about their lives, they don't actually consciously register kwamba every day my routine is I go and I nagonga 3 bottles of wine. They don't know. They're just going through the motions. So they don't know. They don't pick up consciously kwamba this is actually a bad habit.
You don't examine your life.
Yeah.
The unexamined life is not worth living.
So once you know,
it's not me, by the way. It's a Stoic quote.
Once you know yourself, it's upon you to act on it. Hamna Nadia, Michael, wala Princely who will come and do any of these things for you. Even in therapy, we help you build that awareness and teach you tools and skills that you have to apply. I cannot do it for you. No one, not even your parents waliokuzaa can do it for you. Not even God can do it. Mungu mwenyewe anasema jisaidie naye atakusaidia.
Yes.
So
Usijisaidie. Ile style fulani ya kujisaidia.
So Princely Glorious on Instagram and on Twitter. So he on Twitter waga anaandika vitu vingi sana vya busara. Mi waga namwambia kuna vitu vingine vikiandikwa nikitaka kuongea na watu na realize sina energy. Juzi nilikwambia. Na Princely, this is something about unaweza ukaongea na watu. Mimi sina energy, the language, wala muda wa kuweza kuzungumza na watu kuhusu hivi vitu. It's not like I've given up on people. It's just that it is what it is. So yeah, Princely unaweza kumcheck pia na on stories on Instagram. They share a lot of the stuff that they do. Lakini vile kama unahitaji proper storyteller, reach out.
At Honest Stories.
Yeah, that's what it does for a living. Nadia at Mind Matters TZ on Instagram and Mind Matters TZ on Twitter. Well, we have a clubhouse. Man, the podcast.
Cool.
We just haven't been. A lot has been happening.
Vingine tunaweza tukaendelea club.
Yes, definitely, and that's the whole point. We wanna do. Tunataka conversation nyingi za podcast kuzipeleka pia kwenye clubhouse kwa sababu we feel like. Tunapata wachangiaji wengi sana, engagement pia inakuwa nzuri. We've been saying kwamba tutafanya hivi vitu lakini mambo ni mengi mno, but I promise you guys we'll definitely get on that. At Man the Podcast on Twitter and at Man the Podcast on Instagram. Catch us on Spotify, Deezer, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audiomack, Boomplay, na popote pale ambapo unapata podcast yako. Just remember to subscribe. Now give us ratings as well, because the more you do that, the more watu wengine pia wanapata nafasi ya kutusikiliza. So don't be selfish with the knowledge unayopata hapa. Share. You know, till next time. Mimi naitwa Michael Baruti. Thank you kwa kusikiliza part 1 and part 2 of this conversation, yeah?
you're welcome.
Yeah. Till next time, we are out.
Always a pleasure.
Men, the podcast.